You see, something's going to happen.
What? What's going to happen?
Something wonderful.
What?
I understand how you feel. You see, it's all very clear to me now.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. In the first part of this series, we traced how color moves through the body and psyche as a quiet but persistent force, shaping mood, attention, and psychological response long before conscious thought steps in. Yet the visible spectrum holds more than its primary anchors. Between the obvious reds and blues lies a subtler terrain of blended hues, cultural overlays, and contextual meanings, colors that operate less like alarms and more like atmospheres. Orange, pink, brown, indigo, and gold do not merely stimulate or soothe. They condition how we relate to pleasure, safety, grounding, inward attention, and meaning itself. These colors occupy psychological middle ground, where biology and symbolism overlap, and where emotional memory often speaks louder than wavelength alone. In this second part, we move deeper into that territory, examining not only how these colors affect mood and perception, but how their influence changes depending on context, culture, neurology, and environment. We also widen the lens beyond individual hues to explore what happens when color is removed entirely, when it becomes overwhelming, or when it is deliberately engineered through modern lighting technologies. From neurological paradoxes like green light easing migraine pain to public health experiments where blue light alters behavior at the edge of life and death, this episode asks a larger question. What if color is not merely something we see, but something that quietly shapes who we are, how we feel, and how we move through the world? First, we'll start with orange. The color orange exudes a sociable warmth that is both invigorating and reassuring. Psychologically, it is often described as energetic and enthusiastic, blending the vitality of red with the cheer of yellow. Exposure to orange hues can uplift our mood and spark friendly conversation. It's no coincidence this attention-grabbing color is used on safety vests and in marketing to draw the eye. In fact, studies show orange is perceived as an exciting, high-arousal color that can even make it harder to focus on tedious tasks because it boosts our energy levels. Physiologically, orange light increases oxygen to the brain and gently stimulates the nervous system, sharpening our mental clarity and appetite in the process. Restaurants often favor orange tones for exactly this reason. The warm glow can encourage social interaction and hearty eating. Yet, like a roaring earth, too much orange heat can become overwhelming. Large doses in a quiet space might impede relaxation or sleep. Moderation allows orange's benefits to shine without burning out our senses. Culturally and spiritually, orange carries profound significance. In many Eastern traditions, it is the color of transformation and illumination. The saffron robes of Buddhist monks, worn since the time of Buddha, symbolize simplicity and the letting go of materialism. In Hindu and Buddhist practices, saffron orange is considered holy, associated with purity and the quest for enlightenment. Likewise, the Svadhisthana chakra, sacral chakra, and Ayurvedic and Yogic systems radiates orange, governing creativity, sensuality, and the joyful flow of life's pleasures. Healers in these traditions teach that meditating on an orange glow near the lower abdomen can stir one's creative energy and emotional balance. In design and therapy, orange is used thoughtfully to stimulate optimism and playfulness. Art therapists and color consultants suggest touches of orange in environments for those who feel sad or lethargic. Much like a sunset's afterglow, a bit of orange can chase away sadness and kindle warmth and contentment. Its joyful vibration is even said to help rebalance joy and fight depression in color healing practices. However, therapeutic use of orange comes with a gentle warning. A blazing orange wall can excite the mind too much for comfort, so designers often employ softer apricot or peach tones in healing spaces. In sum, orange is the color of friendly vitality. It nurtures social connection and creative impulse with a heat that must be tended like a campfire, not left to burn uncontrolled. Where orange crackles with warmth, pink softly whispers of care and tranquility. Psychologically, pink is tied to feelings of tenderness, compassion, and hope. It's often described as the hue of gentle love. If hugs were a color, they might be pink. Research indeed suggests that pink environments can evoke calmness and empathy, enveloping us in a sense of nurturing safety. In color psychology experiments, even a brief exposure to certain shades of pink has been found to diffuse agitation and anxiety, which is why pale pink tones have been used in some hospitals and correctional facilities as a calming tool. The most famous example is the bubblegum tinted Baker Miller pink, which was shown to temporarily pacify aggressive behavior and reduce hostility in confined subjects. Just 15 minutes in a pink-walled room can noticeably slow a person's heart rate and lower blood pressure, an effect that can linger for up to a half hour afterward. This physiological response, muscles loosening, pulse easing, underscores pink's unique power to physically soothe. Little wonder that light pink rooms are often introduced in mental health settings to dispel rage and panic, replacing them with an almost maternal sense of protection. Yet, pink is not merely sedative. It carries a cultural heft that has evolved over time. Once dismissed as delicate or overly feminine in the West, pink is now being reappraised as a color of strength and softness. In feng shui and modern design, dusty pinks and rose tones create atmosphere of harmony, healing emotional wounds with their gentle presence. Some energy healers associate pink with the heart chakra, complementing the heart's green energy with the themes of unconditional love and self-compassion. In fact, holistic designers often suggest pink accents for those who are self-critical or grief-stricken. The color can serve as a visual reminder to be kind to oneself. Studies in holistic interiors note that pink promotes a sense of nurturing and empathy in anyone, regardless of gender, encouraging our softer, caring side to emerge. This makes pink a popular choice in therapeutic design for trauma survivors or caregiving spaces, where an ambience of safety and kindness is paramount. Therapeutically, pink noise might be a term in sound, but pink peace is very much a visual strategy, using blush color lighting or decor to reduce aggression and invite emotional balance. Practitioners do caution that context matters, but too much saturated pink can feel infantilizing or emasculating to some. Deep fuchsia or hot pink, while vibrant and empowering, might be reserved for accent moments so as not to overwhelm a serene space. Basically, pink embodies a poetic paradox. It is a gentle balm for frayed nerves, yet within its softness lies a quiet resilience. It reminds us that comfort and strength need not be opposites. In the rosy glow of pink, they become one and the same, promoting peace without sacrificing passion. And next we have brown. Solid as the earth and humble as the soil, brown is the color of quiet stability. Psychologically, brown tends to evoke feelings of groundedness, reliability, and comfort. In a world of fleeting neon and glare, brown enters like a reassuring whisper, the hue of old wood, rich leather, and well-trodden paths. Color theorists note that brown doesn't dazzle the eye, instead it wraps a space in quiet energy that doesn't overwhelm. In our homes and environments, touches of brown, a walnut table, a clay pot, a burlap textile, can subconsciously cue the mind to slow down and feel safe. Indeed, designers often use brown as a warming neutral that fosters feelings of coziness and authenticity. Research in color psychology shows that people who crave security tend to favor brown's honest, unpretentious vibe. It's a color that does not try too hard, offering warmth and depth without flash. Physiologically, soft brown tones are easy on the eyes and may even help calm the senses. There's no jarring signal in brown, nothing to startle the nervous system. As a result, a predominantly brown setting can lower one's arousal and encourage relaxation. Imagine the sedative effect of a log cabin or a forest floor. Brown nurtures with its earthly safety. It's even said to subtly slow the appetite, at least compared to the stimulating effect of reds or oranges, which is why you'll rarely see a fast food chain painted brown. Instead, brown often appears in cafes or coffee shops to impart warmth and steadiness, and of course, to match the aroma of roasted beans. From a cultural and spiritual perspective, brown is deeply connected to earth energy and humility. In medieval Europe, monks of certain orders, like the Franciscans, wore plain brown robes to signify their vow of poverty and connection to the common folk. This tradition highlighted brown as the color of modesty, down-to-earth values, and renunciation of luxury. A visual reminder that from dust we come and to dust we return. Indigenous cultures worldwide, too, have seen brown as sacred in its own right, the color of Mother Earth's skin, carrying vibrations of fertility, stability, and respect for the land. In Feng Shui and traditional Chinese five-element theory, brown aligns with the earth element alongside yellow, bringing the qualities of nourishment and centeredness. A brown ceramic jar or a bowl of soil is used in some folk healing rituals to ground a distressed person's energy, literally pulling their attention back to solid ground. In modern therapeutic design, biophilic principles take advantage of brown's calming effect by introducing natural wood and stone into hospitals and schools. Studies have found that environments rich in natural earthy materials can reduce stress and promote a sense of well-being, likely by reconnecting us with the rhythms of nature. Warm brown tones in a counseling office, think soft cocoa-colored upholstery or sandy beige walls, help clients feel safe and at home, facilitating trust and openness. Of course, brown's downside is that it can become dreary or stagnant if overused without contrast. A room swathed entirely in brown might feel oppressively dull or melancholic, as if one were, quite literally, in the mud. To counter this, designers balance brown with lighter creams, fresh greens, or sky blues, recreating the reassuring yet open feeling of a landscape. At its best, brown is deeply restorative. It is the color of mulched gardens and sturdy tree trunks, quietly reminding us of the strength in our roots and the simple comfort of what is natural and enduring. Next up, we have indigo. Mysterious and contemplative, indigo dwells at the edge of night, a bridge between the visible world of blue and the unseen realm of violet. Long associated with mysticism and inner wisdom, indigo carries a psychological profile of intuition, introspection, and spiritual awareness. It is the color of midnight skies and deep oceans, often triggering a sense of awe and turning our thoughts inward. When people describe feeling indigo's influence, they speak of enhanced concentration and a gentle awakening of the third eye, which in yoga and chakra traditions is located at the brow and portrayed as indigo light. Indeed, indigo is the hue of the ajna, third eye chakra, governing intuition, imagination, and the connection between mind and spirit. Visualizing an indigo orb at the forehead during meditation is thought to clear away illusion and reveal deeper truths, helping one trust their gut feelings and perceive the subtle patterns of life. Psychologically, indigo can have a profound, calming yet clarifying effect on the mind. Practitioners of chromotherapy say the color has a grounding effect on the mind, helping to calm anxious thoughts and increase mental clarity, aiding the focused mind state needed for meditation. There is even some neuroscience evidence for indigo's unique impact. Exposure to indigo light has been found to stimulate the brain's hippocampus, boosting memory formation, and increase alpha-theta brainwaves in the prefrontal cortex, patterns linked to creative insight and relaxed alertness. In other words, indigo literally shifts our brain into a different gear, one conducive to gentle introspection and aha moments of creativity. Physically, indigo is considered a cooling, sedative color. Healers have used indigo light to help with ailments of the eyes, ears, and sinuses, as it is believed to soothe and relax the nervous system and muscles. It is not unusual to find an indigo-tinted light in a sensory room or spa, introduced to promote deep relaxation or even mild analgesic effects for pain and tension. Culturally and spiritually, indigo has been associated with mystery and the quest for inner knowledge. The deep indigo dye, once as precious as gold, was used historically to color the robes of wisdom. From the indigo turbans of certain desert mystics to the robes of academic masters, think of Oxford and Cambridge, where indigo and purple signify the highest scholastic honors. In Jungian psychology, indigo symbolizes the bridging of consciousness and unconsciousness, a transcendent function that connects logic, blue, with the mystic unknown, violet. This perhaps is why indigo can evoke a feeling of standing at the threshold of a dream. It's the color of dusk, when day and night meet, a liminal time known in folklore to be especially enchanted. Traditional Ayurvedic healers sometimes refer to indigo as the night's gentle healer, using it to cool excess heat in the body and calm hyperactivity. In Chinese philosophy, while indigo isn't one of the classic five-element colors, it aligns with the yin, wintry aspect of water, deep introspection and wisdom. Indigo dyes were also significant in many indigenous cultures. For example, some Native American traditions viewed indigo as a protective color for the spirit, used in sand paintings or ritual garments to ward off evil and enhance psychic abilities. In modern therapeutic design, indigo and violet lighting have been explored in specialized clinics and retreats. An indigo room might be a meditation chamber painted in deep blue violet tones, or a planetarium-like space where people with anxiety can lie back and gaze at a stimulated night sky to reduce stress. Therapists practicing techniques like ETT, emotional transformation therapy, have even used indigo light filters to facilitate somatic healing and trauma processing, finding that this color can open clients to intuitive insights and buried memories in a gentle way. However, as with any powerful tool, indigo's shadow side warrants respect. Too much time in one's head under an indigo spell can lead to over-introspection or escape from reality. Some individuals prone to depression may find deep purples and indigos intensify their brooding, if not balanced with brighter, grounding colors. Thus, therapists often pair indigo with touches of its complementary color, yellow, symbolizing logic and sunlight, to keep one foot on solid ground while the other explores the cosmos of the mind. When used wisely, it opens a window to the soul, allowing insight and peace to flow in like the gentle indigo twilight at day's end. And finally, we have gold. Radiant and majestic, gold is less a color than a living light. It is the sheen of the sun distilled into matter, a hue that speaks of wealth and wisdom, glory and grace. Psychologically, gold imbues a space and psyche with optimism, vitality, and a sense of reward. People often describe feeling uplifted or inspired in the presence of golden light, as though the environment itself is smiling. In color research, gold, a variant of yellow, has been linked to stimulating and mood-lifting effects, but with a gentler quality than stark yellow. It tends to spark confidence and positivity without the edge of anxiety bright yellow can bring. In fact, gold carries connotations of success and achievement across many cultures, which can translate into an emotional boost. Think of the thrill of winning a gold medal. This association with triumph can unconsciously raise one's self-esteem or motivation in a golden-hued setting. Physiologically, golden or amber light has a soothing influence on our circadian biology. As evening falls, the sky often turns golden, and exposure to such warm light signals our brain that it's time to unwind. Modern lighting studies confirm that swapping out harsh blue, white lights for soft gold tone light in the evening helps the body produce melatonin and prepare for restful sleep. Thus, gold light is increasingly used in dynamic lighting systems to support healthy rhythms. For example, hospitals may employ bluish light by day for alertness and golden light at night to encourage patients' recovery and sleep. Even in color therapy lore, golden light is said to strengthen the immune system and energize the body gently, much like morning sunshine. Some practitioners of Ayurvedic medicine use Swarna Bhasma, incinerated gold ash, in tiny doses as a tonic, believing it imparts the sun's vitality to the patient. While the science on ingesting gold is scant, the symbolism is clear. Gold rejuvenates. On a spiritual and cultural level, gold is arguably the most universally revered color. Throughout history, it has symbolized the divine, the uncorruptible essence of gods and enlightened beings. In Christian iconography, saints and angels are depicted with golden halos, signifying holiness and the light of heaven. In Buddhist tradition, the gold leaf applied to sacred statues, such as the towering golden Buddhas of Thailand, represents enlightenment and spiritual perfection, the ultimate purification of the soul. Alchemists saw physical gold as the endpoint of transformation, but also as a metaphor for the spiritual gold, enlightenment achieved through trials. Carl Jung noted that across cultures, gold is the color of the apex of spirituality and intuition, representing the highest development of the self. Culturally, we see striking contrasts. For instance, in some East Asian traditions, gold and yellow was reserved for emperors. It symbolized imperial authority bestowed by heaven. In Chinese culture, gold is associated with prosperity and good fortune, often paired with red for joyous occasions. In India, the golden marigold flower is offered in temples and weddings to invoke blessings of abundance and sacredness. Even in contexts of mourning or fear, gold shines as hope. In Eastern Orthodox lore, a dream of gold can mean an angel is near, guiding one through darkness. This nearly universal esteem for gold underscores its role as a connector between material wealth and spiritual wealth. While gold does not denote money and success, deeper interpretations remind us that true gold is inner wisdom. For example, the Persian poet Rumi wrote of an inner gold found in the heart more precious than earthly gold. In therapeutic design and modern wellness practices, gold finds a place as well. Candlelight therapy uses the golden glow of candles to induce relaxation and focus during meditation, capitalizing on that warm flickering light to center the mind. Some high-end healing spas incorporate gold tones or even gold flakes in treatments, not just for luxury, but for the belief that gold's vibrational energy can ward off negativity and strengthen the aura. When creating healing environments, designers might incorporate gold accents, a sunrise-colored wall, golden yellow upholstery, or actual metallic gold trim to induce a sense of optimism and sacredness. Such touches must be balanced. A completely gilded room could just as easily feel gaudy or overstimulating. But when used judiciously, gold details can make a space feel bathed in sunlight, lifting mood and even fostering resilience. In some trauma recovery centers, therapists have a practice of guided visualization where clients imagine a golden light of protection surrounding them to build feelings of safety and empowerment. Gold's only caution might be its material shadow. Because it's linked to opulence, it can inadvertently trigger feelings of inadequacy or greed if a person's mindset skews that way. But as color in isolation, gold truly symbolizes illumination. It reminds us of the light within that never tarnishes. Whether in the beam of sunrise or the gilding of a sacred text, gold invites us to celebrate the highest parts of our human experience: enlightenment, compassion, generosity, and joy. Our journey through the spectrum has revealed how individual colors touch the mind, body, and spirit. But the story wouldn't be complete without exploring some advanced topics and special cases. In this part of the episode, we will examine the extremes and nuances of human color experience, from the abyss of colorless worlds to the dizzying kaleidoscope of overstimulation. From innovative therapies using dynamic light to the personal differences that shape how each of us sees and feels color. So what happens when color is taken away? In extreme cases, the absence of color and sensory stimuli can unravel the mind. A phenomenon starkly illustrated by white torture, a form of solitary confinement where prisoners are surrounded by nothing but white walls, white cloths, white light, and bland white food. Deprived of the slightest hue or sound, the brain struggles in the void. Over time, this color deprivation and monotony of stimulus can lead to profound disorientation, hallucinations, and even psychosis. Victims report losing their very sense of self as the endless white erases the usual anchors of reality. While such torture is an unethical extreme, it underscores the importance of color and varied sensory input for mental well-being. Interestingly, controlled sensory deprivation in therapeutic contexts can have the opposite effect. Flotation tanks, for instance, provide a dark, colorless, silent environment where the body floats in salt water, but for limited periods and in a safe setting. Far from causing distress, these restricted environmental stimulation therapy sessions often induce deep relaxation, pain relief, and creative introspection. Clinical studies of flotation therapy have found significant reductions in stress and anxiety, improved mood, and even enhanced sleep quality after a series of float sessions. In essence, short-term sensory isolation can reset an overstimulated nervous system, like hitting pause on sensory overload to let the mind reboot. It's a delicate balance. A brief retreat into colorless quietude can be therapeutic, floating in darkness to relieve chronic pain or PTSD hyperarousal, but prolonged deprivation flips into harm. Another gentler example is the Gansfield effect. Sit someone in a softly lit, featureless room, or have them wear a uniformly colored translucent visor, and within minutes, the brain, starved of distinct input, will start generating its own imagery and sounds. Researchers have used this to study hallucinations in a safe way. People often report seeing blobs of colors or patterns emerging from the nothingness. It seems the human brain needs color and contrast. When it's lacking, the brain's default mode network kicks in to create something, anything, to fill the void. For those curious about sensory isolation as a mindfulness or creativity tool, the key is duration and intention. A meditative hour in a dim flotation pod can mimic the womb and bring peace, whereas days in a colorless cell break the psyche. This speaks to a broader truth. We are creatures wired for sensory balance. A period of minimal stimulation can be healing, but life in full black and white without respite of color soon becomes a void in which the mind may lose its bearings. Just as too little stimulation disturbs, so can too much. In our neon-lit, screen-saturated world, many people, especially those with sensory sensitivities or trauma backgrounds, experience color overload. For neurodivergent individuals, such as someone in the autism spectrum or with ADHD, colors can feel brutally intense. Studies indicate that up to 85% of autistic children perceive colors more vividly or louder than neurotypical peers, due to differences in how their retinas and brains process color signals. What might be a pleasantly bright decor for one person could be a kaleidoscope onslaught for someone with sensory processing challenges. Hypersensitivity to color means that a bold red wall can trigger psychological stress, heart rate rising, eyes averting, where a muted green wall would not. For this reason, designers of autism-friendly and trauma-informed spaces favor soft, subdued palettes, gentle blues, greens, and earthy neutrals that provide visual structure without bombarding the senses. Such colors have shorter wavelengths or lower saturation, which are empirically shown to be less overwhelming to a hypersensitive nervous system. In one design guide, a specialist notes, if you are hypersensitive to color, opt for finishes that are soft and desaturated. Bold patterns and bright colors can trigger agitation or shutdown. This principle is being applied in therapeutic classrooms, psychiatric clinics, and dementia care homes as well, creating calmer environments to reduce anxiety and outbursts. Certain colors are known culprits of overstimulation. Brilliant red, for instance, is a high-energy color that can provoke tension or even anger in susceptible individuals. It literally raises blood pressure and adrenaline in many people. Vibrant yellow, surprisingly, can be one of the most overstimulating colors. While it's cheery in moderation, large fields of intense yellow have been reported to make babies cry and adults anxious. Some speculate it's the strain it puts on the eyes. Design research for special needs suggests avoiding pure bright yellow in sensory rooms, as it can contribute to what they call sensory overload and irritability. White is another interesting case. One might think white is neutral and calming, but an overuse of stark white, especially under harsh lighting, often increases anxiety rather than easing it. Partly, this is due to negative association, sterile hospital corridors, blank isolation, and partly due to the lack of warmth or boundary that all white creates. Trauma survivors, for example, might feel unsettled in an all-white room at a clinic, recalling involuntary hospital stays or simply feeling exposed. Incorporating warmer off-whites or soft colors can significantly improve comfort and reduce anxiety in these settings. Another population to consider are those with ADHD. Some research suggests that highly saturated contrasting colors in a classroom can make it harder for them to focus, effectively revving up their already active brains. By contrast, cool blues and greens can help regulate the nervous system, encouraging a quieter mind state more conducive to concentration. In one ADHD learning center, walls were painted a pale sage green and furnishings kept in gray blues after the realization that a formerly bright, primary colored scheme was exacerbating behavioral issues. Managing color overstimulation is thus about tone and quantity. For individuals prone to sensory overload, less is more. A curated palette of calm colors with only sparing use of brights for accents or interest. Imagine a quiet room designed for a child on the spectrum. Instead of a riot of rainbow toys, it might have the soft beige carpeting, pastel blue beanbags, and a few gentle pops of lavender or peach. This doesn't mean eliminating color entirely, which, as discussed, has its own issue, but choosing hues that support equilibrium rather than destabilize it. On the flip side, for those who are under-responsive, carefully placed bold colors can be beneficial. For example, introverted or hyposensitive individuals may perk up with a dose of sunshine yellow or orange in their environment. The key is personalization. One person's solace may be another's sensory barrage. In trauma-informed design, the mantra is safe, not sterile, engaging, not overwhelming. Using trauma survivors as an example, therapy spaces often stick to earth tones and blues, evoking safety and nature and avoiding jarring contrast or patterns that might distract or trigger. By modulating our environment colors to the needs of those within, we acknowledge that the psychology of color is not one size fits all. A balanced spectrum, neither too blinding nor too barren, helps the widest range of the nervous system feel secure and supported. Advances in lighting technology have opened new frontiers in color therapy through dynamic light. Rather than static illumination, therapists and designers are exploring light systems that shift in color and intensity over time to support healing and circadian balance. This concept, often called human-centric lighting or circadian lighting, essentially uses changing colors to mimic the natural progression of daylight, a form of chromotherapy built into architecture. Research has shown that our bodies respond strongly to the color temperature of light. Bright, blue and rich light by day boosts alertness and mood, while warm amber light in the evening allows melatonin to rise for sleep. Dynamic lighting rigs in some hospitals and elder care facilities now transition through a sun cycle, starting with gentle dawn-like golden tones, ramping up to noonday cool whites, then tapering to calm amber by dusk. Early studies in an intensive care unit found that such dynamic daylight mimicking light improved patient sleep quality and reduced delirium, as it resynchronized their circadian rhythms, which are often disrupted in windowless medical rooms. The mantra, lighting to heal, not just lighting to see, is becoming a reality, with programmable LEDs functioning almost like a drug-free chronotherapy to steady the body's clock. Beyond hospitals, color cycling therapy is being experimented within mental health and wellness settings. For instance, in stress reduction clinics, a meditation room might gradually cycle through calming hues, soft blue to gentle green to violet, over a 15-minute period, guiding the client through a journey of colors that each invoke relaxation, creativity, or introspection at different stages. Anecdotally, many find that this slow shift of ambient color holds their focus in mindfulness sessions. As one color flows into the next, it provides a gentle anchor for awareness. Similarly, in sensory integration therapy for neurodivergent children, rooms with controllable LED lighting allow therapists to adjust color on the fly. A child overwhelmed by stimulation might be soothed by dimming the lights to a cool aqua shade, whereas a child who is sluggish might benefit from a brief burst of bright orange light to perk up their energy. Even commercial wellness products have caught on. Devices like mood lamps, smart bulbs, and sunrise alarm clocks let users play with dynamic color at home. A sunrise alarm will shift from deep red, mimicking pre-dawn, through oranges and golds to cool white, naturally coaxing the body awake as natural dawn would, which studies show can improve morning well-being and cognitive performances, especially in dark winter months. Meanwhile, some insomnia treatments involve color filters or apps that reduce blue light in the evenings, turning screens and bulbs more amber to prevent melatonin suppression, another everyday example of dynamic color for health. In the realm of psychiatry, there's exploratory work on color and mood modulation. One pilot study has participants with depression spend time each day in a room with slowly cycling colored light to see if it could entrain mood cycles or alleviate symptoms when used alongside talk therapy. While conclusions are preliminary, participants reported the experience soothing and reported different emotional recalls under different colored lights, suggesting therapists could potentially use timed color changes to help patients access certain feelings or memories in session. For example, a shift to soft pink light might facilitate discussions of self-compassion or childhood, given pink's nurturing vibe, whereas a move into golden light might be used when reinforcing positive progress or hope. Color cycling art installations have also been used in anxiety treatment groups. Sitting inside an immersive dome where colors flow like visual symphony can induce a mild meditative trance, lowering heart rates and anxious thoughts as the eternal world is washed away by pure color. Of course, rigorous research is still catching up to practice in many of these areas. We know a lot about static color effects, less about dynamic sequences. One challenge is isolating whether it's the color itself or the change that has effect. Nevertheless, circadian supportive lighting has strong evidence behind it and is being rapidly adopted in workplaces and clinics to improve alertness by day and restfulness by night. And in a broader sense, this trend highlights a remarkable convergence of technology with ancient intuition. We are, in a way, recreating the age-old healing power of watching a sunrise or sitting by a fire, now with LED panels and algorithms. The core idea remains the same, that light and color are medicine, and when delivered in the right dose at the right time, they can profoundly influence our mental and physical health. Color is a language, but its dictionary changes with context. A hue that heralds celebration in one culture might scream danger in another. Understanding these cultural nuances and taboos of color is crucial in our interconnected world, a fact not lost on global companies or multicultural healers. Consider the color white. In much of the Western world, white symbolizes purity, innocence, and new beginnings, like bridal gowns and christening clothes. However, across large parts of East Asia, China, Korea, Japan, as well as in India and Middle Eastern cultures, white is the color of death and mourning. In China, white garments and white flowers are traditional at funerals. A bride wearing pure white in China historically would have been seen as deeply inauspicious. This divergence stems from symbolism. Where Western traditions linked white with spiritual purity, often via Christian imagery of light and goodness, Eastern traditions saw white as the blankness of emptiness and the afterlife. Bones turn white, the season of winter, etc. Thus, a well-meaning Western therapist using an all-white decor for its clean serenity might inadvertently unsettle or offend an East Asian client for whom the room whispers of death. Likewise, black has opposite connotations across cultures. In Europe and America, black is associated with mourning, evil, or formality, a color of both funerals and elegant black tie events. In many African cultures, however, black can symbolize maturity and wisdom. For example, in parts of West Africa, black and red together may be worn by chiefs or used in ceremonies to represent the wisdom of ancestral spirits, not just grief. Red is perhaps the most striking example of split meanings. In Western contexts, red often means stop, danger, passion, or love. It's intense and can signal both romantic love, red roses, and aggression or emergency, red alert, or stop signs. In China and much of East Asia, by contrast, red is the ultimate auspicious color of good fortune, happiness, and prosperity. Chinese weddings are traditionally awash in red. Envelopes of money given at New Year are red for luck. Yet even within Asia, red can have a dark side. In some old Chinese dynasties, red was also linked to death when paired with black. And in Japan, writing a person's name in red ink is taboo as it's thought to portend their death. Context is everything. A red lantern festival, lantern brings joy, but a red written name on a gravestone is a curse. Fascinatingly, in parts of Africa, like Nigeria and Chad, red is seen as unlucky or disruptive, possibly due to associations with blood and warfare. Meanwhile, in South Africa, red is one of the colors of the national flag and can symbolize sacrifice and unity. The color yellow, similarly, carries mixed messages. It's broadly happy in the West, smiley faces and sunflowers, yet in Germany, a yellow liver meant cowardice, and in France, a traitor was painted yellow. In Japan, yellow symbolizes courage and nobility, the complete opposite of its cowardly image in English idiom. Cultural color meanings can also be highly specific and symbolic. In Hinduism, saffron orange is sacred, the color of fire and purity, worn by holy men as a sign of their quest for truth. It represents letting ego burn away. In Thailand, each day of the week has an associated lucky color. For example, Monday's color is yellow. Many Thais will wear yellow on Mondays to honor the king who was born on a Monday. Green can mean environmental harmony in the West. But to say someone is wearing a green hat in China means he's a cuckold, an old story about merchants wearing green headgear. In Mexico, wearing bright purple could be interpreted as a reference to death, since purple flowers are used during Day of the Dead celebration. Blue is particularly interesting. Globally, it's one of the most beloved and seemingly benign colors, but even it has its quirks. In the Middle East and parts of South Asia, blue, especially turquoise, is seen as a protective color against the evil eye. That's why you see those blue glass talismans in Turkey and Greece. In Iran, however, blue can also signify mourning, as blue clothes were historically worn when one was in mourning. And in some Latin American cultures, dark blue might carry a religious tone due to the Virgin Mary's iconography. For healers and therapists working cross-culturally, these meanings are more than trivial. They can influence how a client reacts to a space or even a visualization exercise. A guided imagery of surrounding yourself in white light, common in the New Age and Western therapeutic practices, might be comforting to a New Yorker, but could disturb a Chinese elder who associates white light with ancestral ghosts. Thus, many modern practitioners tailor their approach. like using gold or blue light imagery as a protective visualization in cultures who those colors have spiritual resonance. Gold for divine light, blue for heavenly protection, instead of defaulting to white. In design, international companies meticulously adjust product colors. The same soda might be red in one country to grab attention, but toned down in another where red is overused or unlucky. The global language of color is rich and context dependent. It teaches us an important lesson in humility. Our personal feelings about a color are partly programmed by our culture. Recognizing this can expand our empathy and effectiveness when communicating or healing across cultural lines. As the famous adage goes, blue is the color of mourning in Iran, but of brides' garters in the USA. Each hue holds multitudes, and by learning its regional dialects, we become more fluent in the human experience. Now a little bit about green light and migraines. The relationship between light and migraine represents one of neurology's most vexing paradoxes. For the 12% of the global population afflicted with migraine, light is rarely neutral. It is either a weapon or, in rare instances, solace. Photophobia, the painful aversion to light experienced by over 80% of migraineurs during attacks, transforms ordinary illumination into a source of agony. Yet emerging from laboratories of Harvard Medical School comes a discovery that seems to defy this fundamental truth. For some patients, a specific band of visible spectrum, green light, does not exacerbate pain but diminishes it. This is the story of how a particular wavelength, precisely 520 nanometers, is being reimagined from a mere color into a therapeutic modality, transforming our understanding of sensory neurology and challenging the pharmaceutical paradigm of migraine treatment. The green light narrative began not with a deliberate search for a cure, but with an investigation into neurological mystery. In 2010, Dr. Rami Burstein's laboratory at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center and Harvard Medical School set out to understand why light hurts during migraine. The conventional wisdom that photophobia was secondary consequences of headache pain crumbled under their scrutiny. Their series of experiments, published in Nature Neuroscience in 2010, demonstrated that photophobia could be induced in blind migraineurs who lacked functional rods and cones, the eye's classic photoreceptors. This revelation pointed at an alternative pathway, the intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, IPRGCs, a subset of retinal neurons expressing melanopsin, a photopigment distinct from the better-known rhodospin. Melanopsin's spectral sensitivity peaks at the blue range, around 480 nanometers, which explains why blue light is particularly noxious during migraine. But as Burstein's team traced the neural circuitry forward, using animal models and human neuroimaging, they discovered something unexpected. The IPRGCs project directly to the posterior thalamus, specifically the thalamic relay neurons that integrate sensory information before transmitting it to the cerebral cortex. During migraine, these thalamocortical pathways become hyperexcitable. Light, particularly at offending wavelengths, amplify this hyperexcitability, turning the thalamus into a broadcast station for pain signals. It was within this circuitry that the green light discovery emerged, almost as an afterthought. The researchers were systematically testing different wavelengths to map the spectral sensitivity of migraine exacerbation. They expected green light to produce moderate discomfort, less than blue, perhaps, but still unpleasant. Instead, in a subset of preliminary observations, patients reported that a narrow band of green light felt soothing. This anomaly launched a decade-long investigation into the therapeutic potential of what would become known as narrow-band green light therapy. This foundational work crystallized in a 2016 paper published in Brain by Nocetta, Bernstein, and colleagues. This study was meticulously designed to isolate wavelengths from other variables like luminance and color temperature. They exposed 69 migraineurs to white, blue, green, amber, and red light at controlled intensities during acute migraine attacks. While all colors except green intensified headache pain in a significant majority of subjects, narrowband green light, peak wavelength 521 nanometers, half-band 5 nanometers, reduced pain in 20% of the patients and produced no change in roughly half, meaning it was the only wavelength that did not worsen symptoms in the vast majority. The effect size was modest, but clinically meaningful. On average, patients reported a 15 to 20% reduction in pain intensity when exposed to green light compared to a 15 to 20% increase with white, blue, red, and amber light. More striking was the consistency of the finding across repeated trials. The mechanism appeared to involve reduced activation of the IPRGC thalamocortical pathway. Using electroretinography and functional MRI, the researchers showed that green light generated the weakest IPRGC-driven responses in both retina and thalamus, effectively speaking the quietest possible language to an already overstimulated pain network. This was not merely about avoiding harm. It was about active benefit. Subsequent work from the same group, published in Cephalalgia in 2021 by Rodrigo, moved from acute treatment to preventative application. In a randomized placebo-controlled crossover trial, they had patients with episodic migraine sit in a dark room for 2 hours daily, exposed either to narrowband green LED light or a placebo white light filtered to appear green but containing a broad spectrum of wavelengths. Over 10 weeks, the narrowband green light group experienced a remarkable 60% reduction in headache days per month, from 19.8 days to 7.8 days. The placebo group saw only a 15% improvement. This was achieved with no reported side effects, no medication interactions, and no contraindications. Now we are going to move on to blue light. There is a moment just after sunset on a winter evening in Tokyo when the Yamanote Line platforms begin to glow with a light that seems out of place. Beneath the fluorescent overheads that bleach everything white, a subtler illumination rises from the edges of the platform, an aqueous, almost submarine blue that pools along the tracks. To the uninitiated, it might read as an aesthetic flourish, another instance of Japan's meticulous attention to ambient design. To those who know, it is something else entirely. An intervention, a public health strategy rendered in pure wavelength. The claim, which has traveled from Railway Corporation press releases to peer-reviewed journals and into global urban planning circles, is that these lights reduce suicides. But the idea itself is what arrests. That a color, modulated by the physics of light-emitting diodes and installed by municipal engineers, could reach into the darkest human moment and pull someone back. This is the story of the blue lights, but is also a story about what we are willing to believe about the architecture of despair. The blue light installation began not as a scientific trial, but as an act of corporate desperation. In 2009, East Japan Railway Company, JR East, announced it would install blue light emitting diode LEDs at stations across its network. This decision was followed by a striking claim. Keihan Electric Express Railway had reported that suicides at stations with blue lights had fallen by 84%. The number was almost suspiciously dramatic, yet it arrived at a moment when Japan had one of the highest suicide rates among industrialized nations, with a distinctive pattern of platform jumps. Railway companies were being sued by families of the deceased and were hemorrhaging money from service disruptions. The platforms needed something. The initial rollout was modest, a few stations and a pilot program. But the logic, though untested, was intuitive enough to be seductive. Blue is calm. It is the hue of twilight, of deep water, and of the sky just before dawn. Psychologists had long speculated about color's non-conscious effect on mood and behavior, even if the evidence remained maddeningly inconsistent. The hypothesis was simple. A suicidal person on the platform edge exists in a state of narrowed impulsive cognition. The blue light, by introducing a soothing environmental cue, might dilate that moment just enough for the impulse to pass, for the train to arrive safely, for something, anything to change. What makes this story remarkable is that it did not remain in the realm of corporate folklore. It entered the scientific record. The first rigorous test came in 2014, when a team of economists and public health researchers at the University of Tokyo published a study in Journal of Affective Disorders that would become the most cited paper on the phenomenon. Yasuyuki Sawada and Machiko Ueda performed a quasi-natural experiment, analyzing 71 train stations where blue lights had been installed between 2000 and 2010. Their methodology was clever. They compared suicide rates at these stations before and after installations, while using nearby stations without lights as controls. The result was a 44% reduction in suicide at those specific locations. The paper was careful, as good science must be. It acknowledged confounders, platform doors, which physically block access, CCTV cameras, and other suicide prevention measures had been installed concurrently at many stations. Yet even after controlling for these variables, the effect persisted. The authors proposed mechanisms: blue light's purported ability to lower heart rate and blood pressure, its cultural association with serenity, and its potential to disrupt the cry of pain that suicide represents. The study was not a randomized controlled trial, how could it be? But it was the best evidence yet the lights might work. A follow-up study in the same journal 6 years later, led by Eric Yoshiaka, pushed the timeline further, analyzing data from 2010 to 2016. Yoshiaka's team found the initial effect had not decayed. If anything, it appeared to strengthen over time, suggesting a cumulative benefit. They speculated that the lights might operate not only on individual psychology, but on collective perception, a permanent signal that the station is monitored, that prevention is priority, that the space itself is altered for protection. These findings were not isolated. A 2017 meta-analysis in Crisis, the Journal of Crisis Intervention in Suicide Prevention, examined color-based interventions broadly and noted that while most claims in color psychology lack replication, the platform light studies represented a rare exception of field-based evidence. The effect size was modest, but consistent across Japanese datasets. Yet the same journals that published these papers also published their shadows. In 2020, a team of epidemiologists at Osaka University released a preprint that would become a torment to blue light advocates. They reanalyzed the Matsubayashi data using a different statistical model, one that accounted for secular trends in suicide rates independent of the lights. Their conclusion: the effect disappeared into noise. When they expanded the dataset to include stations that had installed lights later in the decade, the correlation weakened further. They argued the original studies had fallen prey to a classic epidemiological trap: regression to the mean. Suicides cluster randomly. A spike at a station prompts installation of lights. The subsequent decline is merely statistical normalization, not causation. The critique went deeper. Platform suicides, they noted, are astonishingly rare events at any single station, perhaps 1 or 2 per year. Detecting a genuine signal in such sparse data requires enormous sample sizes or randomized trials, neither of which exist. The Japanese studies, for all their sophistication, were essentially sophisticated anecdotes. International attempts to replicate the findings have been sobering. A 2021 study in Lancet Psychiatry examined platform suicides in Stockholm, where blue lights were installed at 2 subway stations in 2015. No effect was detected. A similar project in London found no change. Critics argue that cultural specificity mattered. Perhaps blue holds unique symbolic weight in Japan, where it is associated with cleanliness and safety in ways it does not elsewhere. Or perhaps the Japanese data was simply wrong. The color psychology literature itself offers little shelter. A 2014 review by Andrew Elliott and Marcus Mayer in Current Directions in Psychological Science eviscerated decades of claims about color's behavioral effects, noting that most fail to replicate under controlled conditions. Blue, they found, has no universal calming effect. Its impact is mediated by context, culture, and individual experience. The human visual system does not respond to color in the simplistic way that pop psychology imagines. And yet, even the skeptics concede something peculiar. The lights are cheap. Installing LEDs cost a few $1,000s per station, a rounding error in the budget of a railway company that loses millions to each suicide in service delays and legal liability. If the effect is even plausibly real, the cost-benefit calculation is absurdly favorable. We may not know if it works, but we can't afford to assume it does not. To understand why the debate remains unresolved, one must understand the nature of platform suicide. Research by clinical psychologists like Matthew Knock at Harvard has shown that many railway suicides are not meticulously planned but impulsive, occurring within minutes of the decision. The platform is a high lethality environment, where the means are readily available and the time to act is compressed. This is crucial. An intervention doesn't need to resolve depression or existential despair. It needs only to slow the moment, introduce fiction into the impulse. This is where the blue light hypothesis gains conceptual traction. It is not that blue is magic, but that it is different. In the visual clutter of a train platform, advertisements, arrival boards, crowds, a consistent blue glow might function as what cognitive scientists call a salient environment distractor. It captures attention, momentarily interrupting the rumination spiral. A 2015 paper in Psychology of Consciousness by Brandon Tracy and Roy Baumeister suggested that even minimal disruptions to suicidal tunnel vision can increase the likelihood of a second thought. The light is not a therapy, it is a speed bump. There is also the signaling hypothesis. A platform with blue lights broadcasts that someone has done something. It is a visible artifact of care, however minimal. Sociologist Emil Durkheim's century-old work on suicide and social integration suggested that individuals are less likely to take their lives when they feel the community has invested in their survival. A 2019 ethnographic study by anthrop Juko Kitanaka in Culture, Medicine, and Psychiatry interviewed platform staff and passengers about the lights. Most could not articulate why they were installed, but many reported a vague sense that the station was safer, more watched. The effect, if it exists, might be less about color and more about the meta-communication of prevention itself. But this drags us into another problem. If the effect is symbolic, could not any unusual color work? Why not green associated with nature and growth? Why not pink, which in Japan evokes cherry blossoms and renewal? The fact that railway companies chose blue and have stuck with it suggests either a deeper belief in its unique properties or a collective investment in a narrative too expensive to abandon. Now this is the heart of the strangeness. We are asking whether a photon with a wavelength of approximately 470 nanometers can alter the probability of a human death. The question sits at the intersection of materialism and meaning. Physics tell us that color is not a property of objects but of perception, the brain's interpretation of electromagnetic radiation. Blue does not exist in the platform. It exists in the mind of the person seeing it. Yet that mental event is itself a physical process. Opsins in retinal cones trigger neural cascades, modulating activity in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, influencing melatonin, serotonin, perhaps even the prelude to action. The philosopher John Searle's concept of social reality is useful here. The light is a physical object, but its status as an anti-suicide device is a collective intentionality imposed upon it. Its power may derive not from its wavelength, but from the fact that we agree it has power. This is not mere placebo. Social facts can have causal force. Value of money, the authority of a stop sign, these are real because we treat them as real. Perhaps the blue light works because Japanese society, seeing it collectively, performs the belief that it works. The person on the platform edge, caught in that social performance, might feel the weight of that shared belief pressed upon their isolation. This is maddening for empiricists. It suggests that a randomized controlled trial in a culture that does not believe in the lights might fail, while the same intervention in Japan succeeds, not because of physics, but because of narrative. The treatment effect is confounded by cultural placebo. How does science adjudicate such a thing? The blue lights have spread. They can now be found in stations in Sweden, Belgium, Australia, and experimentally in New York City's subway system. Each adoption carries with it a translation problem. Does the meaning of blue travel? In South Korea, where platform suicides are also a crisis, officials installed blue lights but paired them with a public awareness campaign explicitly linking the color to suicide prevention. There is no longer a subtle environmental cue. It is a branded intervention. Early data from Seoul suggests a modest effect. In London, Transport for London installed blue lights at a few stations but refused to frame them as anti-suicide devices. They were presented as ambience improvements. When no effect was found, critics noted that without the narrative framing, the lights were just lights. The experiment had controlled away the social reality that might make them work. This creates a paradox. The more we study the lights in a scientifically rigorous way, stripping them of cultural context, randomizing them, refusing to tell participants their purpose, the more we may be studying something other than the phenomenon we care about. The blue light in its natural habitat is not just a wavelength. It is a story, a ritual, a piece of Japan's invisible architecture of care. On a weekday morning at Shinjuku Station, the world's busiest transport hub, the blue lights are barely noticeable. The platform is a maelstrom of commuters, announcements, and the shriek of approaching trains. Yet there they are, glowing in the gaps between the crowd's feet, a constant presence. Station staff interviewed for this article, who requested anonymity, described a culture of quiet vigilance. They are trained to watch for people lingering too long, for those who do not board. The lights are part of a broader ecosystem. Mirrors that allow them to see around corners, emergency buttons, platform with doors that open only when the trains arrive. One veteran conductor with 20 years on the Yamanote line put it this way: "The lights are not for the people who have decided. They are for the people who are still deciding." This is perhaps the most honest assessment. The blue light is a gamble on the elasticity of the suicidal moment. It is an admission that we cannot cure the conditions that lead people to platforms, but we might, with a trick of light, stretch the instant between impulse and action. It is a technology of the light. Will we ever know if it truly works? The gold standard, a decade-long, multi-site randomized control trial with full cultural framing and no confounding variables, is possible. Suicide too rare, the ethical stakes too high. We are left instead with a mosaic of evidence: robust correlation studies, failed replications, theoretical plausibility, and the haunting possibility that the effect is real but scientifically mysterious. The philosopher Karl Popper argued that for a claim to be scientific, it must be falsifiable. The blue light hypothesis resists falsification because its mechanisms are too entangled with meaning. Yet in Japan, they have ruled that railway companies have a duty of care to install them, citing the 2014 study. The social fact has outrun the scientific one. And now, before we wrap this up, I would like to leave everybody with this. No two people see the same sky in quite the same way. Our perception of color is shaped not only by physics and biology, but also by age, neurology, and personal history. Take age. To an infant, the world is a blaze of new hues. To an older person, those same colors may appear faded. Biologically, as we age, the lenses of our eyes thicken and yellow, subtly filtering the light. An older adult's eyes literally receive less blue light, since a yellowed lens blocks blue, which can make blues look duller and yellows more brighter. But even beyond the eyes, our brains change in color sensitivity. Recent research using pupillometry found that healthier older adults are less sensitive to color vibrancy, chroma, than younger adults. When shown saturated colors, their pupils didn't react as strongly, indicating the brain wasn't perceiving the intensity the same way. Notably, this effect was pronounced for green and magenta hues in the study. The researchers concluded that colors slowly fade as we age, and even suggested this might explain why many older people's color preferences shift towards richer or brighter colors. They crave a bit more stimulation to compensate. It's an intriguing idea. The grandma with the vibrant turquoise blouse, or the senior gentleman who suddenly likes that bold, abstract painting, may not have loved those in youth, but now those colors finally look sufficiently vivid to excite their mellowed vision. Age-related color perception changes have practical implications too. Designers for elder care environments choose colors with high contrast and saturation for important cues, like bathroom grab bars in a bold color, because pastel shades might literally disappear to a 90-year-old's eyes. Additionally, diseases of aging can affect color vision. For example, certain types of dementia, like posterior cortical atrophy, can cause specific deficiencies in perceiving colors, particularly along the blue-green axis. Thus, a therapist working with dementia patients might avoid relying on color-coded instructions, since the patient might not distinguish a blue pill from a gray one. One might find a once favorite color now unrecognizable. Moving from age to neurotype, we've touched on how autistic ADHD individuals might experience colors more intensely or differently. Some on the spectrum have synesthesia, literally seeing sounds or letters in color or feeling certain colors as tastes. Another aspect is how mood and mental state, often shaped by neurodivergence or trauma, can change color perception. For instance, depression is often accompanied by reports that the world looks gray. This isn't just metaphor. There is research hinting that in depressed states, people's contrast perception can diminish, essentially making colors appear less saturated. It's as if the brain's emotional filter dims the colors of the world. On the flip side, states of mania or psychedelic experiences can make colors extraordinarily vibrant. Users of LSD or psilocybin famously report seeing new colors or an intensity to colors that is normally hidden. While drug-induced perception isn't the everyday case, it underscores that our brain's chemistry modulates our color reality. Trauma and personal associations can also play a huge role. If someone was frightened by a person in a bright green coat as a child, they may carry an uneasy feeling about green into adulthood without consciously remembering why. A war veteran might find the color sand brown triggers anxiety by recalling desert combat, whereas a person who grew up by the beach might find the same sandy hue comforting. Therapists sometimes encounter this in art therapy. A client inexplicably avoids using a certain color, only to later uncover a painful memory associated with it. In such cases, color can be a doorway into personal history, a coded signal from the subconscious. Lived experience continually fine-tunes our color perception. There's a saying that we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. A child who spent happy times in a room with yellow wallpaper may carry a subconscious love for soft yellow. It feels like sunshine and grandma's cookies. Another child forced to wear an itchy yellow school uniform might hate yellow forever after. These individual differences mean that generalizations about this color makes everyone feel X will never hold true for absolutely all people. Personal and cultural layers overlay our primal biological responses. For example, while blue light biologically calms the average person's physiology, someone who nearly drowned in the ocean might still feel uneasy in a blue room despite the hormonal effects, because their emotional brain links blue to fear. Or consider gender and upbringing. An older man who was taught that pink is for girls might feel uncomfortable in a pink-toned environment, even though pink's calming effect would work on him if he let it. His cognitive associations create a barrier. Fortunately, humans are adaptable. As awareness grows, people are actively reshaping some of these narratives. The rise of millennial pink showed many men embracing pink in fashion and design, breaking the taboo and thus allowing themselves to enjoy its calming benefits. Finally, there's the element of physiology and ability. A significant portion of the population has some form of color vision deficiency, colorblindness. For them, the world literally contains different color information. A red-green colorblind person might not distinguish those hues well. This doesn't just change their practical navigation. It also alters emotional associations. Imagine never really seeing the red of a rose as others describe it. Would the archetype of red roses as romantic mean the same to you? Some individuals often develop their own unique relationships to color. Perhaps they love a deep navy blue that they see clearly, or they favor high contrast color combinations that give them joy when muddier ones don't. In terms of lived experience, something as nuanced as seasonal changes can alter color perception too. Some studies suggest mood disorders like seasonal affective disorder, SAD, might make one less sensitive to color differences in winter, the world looking monotone as mood drops. And as mood lifts in spring, colors come back. One could say each mind lives in its own subjective color universe shaped by its journey. For caregivers, designers, or anyone seeking to use color positively, the take-home message is to know your audience, know yourself. Guidelines about nervous system arousal or cultural symbolism provide a starting map, but listening to individual reactions is the compass. After all, if a 70-year-old client finds enormous joy in a bright magenta scarf, perhaps because those fading eyes see it as a lovely purple, that magenta might be her calming color, even if general theory labels it a high stimulation hue. By appreciating these differences, we can better tailor environments and therapies that honor both our shared human responses and our beautifully diverse inner worlds. When we step back and look at the full arc of color's influence, from orange's warm activation to indigo's inward pull, From brown's grounding weight to gold's luminous promise, it becomes clear that color is not a passive backdrop to human experience. It is an environmental signal, constantly interpreted by the nervous system before conscious thought ever arrives. Long before we name an emotion, before belief or ideology takes shape, the body is already responding to wavelength, contrast, saturation, and light. Science shows us that color can alter arousal, perception of pain, attention, and even behavior at moments of extreme vulnerability. Tradition shows us that humans have intuited this for millennia, embedding color into ritual, architecture, clothing, and healing practices, not as decoration, but as a way of shaping inner states. In this sense, color becomes a quiet technology, one that operates at the intersection of biology and meaning, physiology and symbol. What emerges from this exploration is not the claim that color controls us, but that it participates in us. It conditions mood, guides attention, and helps set the emotional weather in which thought and action unfold. Whether through the measured calm of a blue-lit platform, the soothing precision of green wavelength easing a migraine, or the deliberate ritual color system of esoteric traditions, the same principle repeats. Change the field, and you change the experience within it. Color, then, is not merely seen, it is felt, processed, remembered, and sometimes ritualized. To become conscious of color's influence is to reclaim a subtle layer of agency over our environments and ourselves. In a world saturated with artificial light and visual noise, understanding how color works on the body and psyche is not just aesthetic knowledge. It is a form of literacy. One that reminds us that even the most ordinary hues are quietly shaping how we feel, how we heal, and how we move through the world. Hope you all enjoyed this episode, and until the next one, everybody be well. Later.